Warning, this episode covers real events involving violence, abuse, and mistreatment. Some scenes and details may be disturbing. Please watch with care.
Ever since it was opened, human rights activists argue Guantanamo is where the US lost its moral authority.
Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
A place of torture and double standards that is mostly off limits for our camera.
You can shout all you want. No one is going to hear you.
A lot of what happened after 9/11 and with Guantanamo really laid the groundwork for what's happening today.
For decades, Guantanamo has worn different masks. A Cold War base, a refugee camp, then a post-9/11 prison. But the purpose never changed. Use distance to detain people in a legal gray zone where arrival is dehumanizing, interrogation can cross the line, and temporary can turn into decades. In this episode, we're tracking how that loophole became a system and why it keeps getting pulled back into the news even today.
In Guantanamo, prisoners were not entitled to any of the protections of the Geneva Conventions. The vast majority were detained indefinitely without trial.
How did a tropical naval base become a legal black hole? What does it do to your mind to sit for 14 years with no trial and then be told it was all a mistake? And what terrifying torture methods were carried out under the guise of lawful interrogation? From waterboarding, malnourishment, and acts of violence like force feeding, Guantanamo Bay is a place steeped with abuse, and many of its victims were proven innocent decades later. We'll get to why in a little bit. And this isn't just history.
The United States is holding migrant detainees from Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Caribbean at immigration facilities on the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base.
In 2025, US President Donald Trump ordered Guantanamo expanded to full capacity to detain what the order called high-priority criminal aliens. But first, how and why was the Guantanamo Bay prison built?
What's taking place down there is responsible, it's humane, it's legal, it's proper, it's consistent with the Geneva Conventions, and after a period, that will sink in.
Sure. Nothing says humane like needing to say it 5 times. I had the chance to speak with Michelle Shepard. She's an award-winning journalist and filmmaker who has covered issues of terrorism and civil rights since the 9/11 attacks. And guess what? She's actually been to Guantanamo Bay.
It's really impossible to describe the place. You hear about this place that, Amnesty International very famously called the gulag of our times, but geographically it's beautiful.
Gitmo, short for Guantanamo, sits on a US base in Cuba. It's surrounded by ocean, razor wire, and watchtowers. And yes, true to Americana, there's even a McDonald's. But why here? After the Spanish-American War in 1903, the US locked in a lease for Guantanamo that Cuba could not easily end, even after the country's 1959 revolution. And to this day, the US still only pays Cuba $3,000 a year for it. For decades, it was just a Cold War-era outpost, until the 1990s turned it into a holding site.
The military coup is underway.
When the Haitian military overthrew elected President Jean-Bertrand Aristide.
Reports that soldiers have killed up to 150 people this week.
After the coup in Haiti, people weren't just leaving for jobs. They were fleeing violence.
In the closing months of 1991, men, women, and children poured out of Port-au-Prince and other port cities around the country, desperate to escape the wrath of Haiti's Tonton-Macoute army.
Thousands of refugees tried to escape by boat. Under President George H.W. Bush, the U.S. stopped many of those boats and needed a place to hold people temporarily, without bringing them into the U.S. Guantanamo fit that role because it sat in a legal in-between zone. These refugees didn't have any legal rights and were trapped behind razor wire. And for those who tried to fight back, they were met with violence from the guards. The lesson stuck. If you hold people offshore, the rules can feel looser. President George Bush Jr. would later lean hard into that advantage. We'll come back to that later. But first, 9/11. That's the moment Guantanamo became the symbol of the war on terror. And a place built on total silence. When you're trapped in a black hole like that, communication is the only thing that matters. That's why our sponsor, Ham Radio Prep, is here to help. They have a fast and easy ham radio course online to get you licensed and up and running with your own equipment. They'll teach you how to operate a ham radio in just a few hours, even if you're a complete beginner like me. You copy? And guys, this is the real deal, not some emergency radio you bought online that actually uses cell towers. Having a ham radio and knowing how to use it is one of the best ways you can prep for any emergency as a survivalist. Ham radio is the only way to communicate worldwide with your own equipment. If you want to get started, scan the QR code or visit hamradioprep.com and use our code HowToSurvive at checkout to save an additional 10% on your purchase when you sign up today. Over and out. Now, back to the show.
Reports in now that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.
2 planes have crashed into the World Trade Center.
A huge explosion now raining debris on all of us.
The United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts.
After September 11th, 2001, Congress passed a resolution which gave President Bush Jr. wide power to go after the people behind the 9/11 attacks, or anyone accused of helping them, and detain them without a trial. That one switch from crime to war changes everything that follows.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
As the fighting spread, many men were captured there or near the Pakistan border.
Only 5% of these people were picked up by the United States. Only 8% of them are accused of being members of the al-Qaeda. Over 90% of them were picked up by Northern Alliance or Pakistani forces in exchange for bounties.
Of course, many took advantage of it. They turned in names for cash, and innocent men like Shakur Amr got swept up too. We'll meet him shortly.
We were dropping bounty leaflets so that if you in Pakistan or Afghanistan would turn in someone like Shakur, you got $5,000, which for us in New York would translate to about $250,000.
There were close to 800 people brought there over the years. It ranged everything from, a goat farmer, just someone who was absolutely mistakenly picked up, to those who are now standing trial still for the 9/11 attacks.
On January 11th, 2002, the first detainees arrived. They were initially held in open-air cages at Guantanamo's Camp X-Ray, and later moved into permanent blocks like Camp Delta. The government's message was simple. These were the worst of the worst.
Worst of the worst.
Too risky to bring to the United States, but if that's true, where's the trial? After 9/11, the priority was not courtroom proof. It was intelligence. Who planned it, who helped, and what might be next. So Guantanamo became the shortcut. Hold people offshore, away from normal court pressure, question them fast, and show the public we're doing something.
Guantanamo Bay was designed from the beginning to undercut the rule of law. There are people who died and we do not know about them. They just disappeared.
The US did not treat detainees like defendants in court. It treated them as wartime prisoners, held under the law of war detention, which brings us to the next domino: interrogation.
It's extremely important that the world gets to see what we do here and how our great soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine, and Coast Guard do their mission on a daily basis to provide the safe, secure, humane, and legal treatment to our detainees.
That's the official story, but in practice, it often looked like the opposite.
In the years that followed, reports of abuse and torture multiplied, all denied by the White House.
In late 2002, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld approved harsh interrogation methods at Guantanamo. Critics and even some officials inside the system warned that they crossed legal and ethical lines. This included stress positions, sleep deprivation, stripping people naked, cramped confinement, beatings, slamming people into walls, and even exploiting specific phobias. And that's just a handful of the so-called enhanced interrogation techniques authorized at the time.
One of the detainees had razor blades used on his genitals. So we've all heard of the waterboarding. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was waterboarded 183 times. Everything was done. There was sort of, gloves were off.
Years later, lawsuits, political blowback, and trials were still haunted by one question. How was that intel really obtained? And in some ways, it backfired on the justice system. In the 9/11 cases, so much evidence is still tangled up in coercion claims that the prosecutions have kept stalling.
Now we know the disasters of the black sites. Torture doesn't give good intelligence. I mean, there never was, in military terms, what you call actionable intelligence from any of this treatment.
For 9/11 families, justice moved slowly. Inside Gitmo, the days moved even slower. And it started the moment you arrived. General Michael Leonard, the commander who helped set up and run the early Guantanamo operation, described the condition of the arriving detainees.
They'd had sensory deprivation. They arrived seriously dehydrated. They'd been put in a kneeling position. Most of them were not able to stand.
Back then, Guantanamo was a machine. 4 camps, hundreds of units, all inside a full US military base, wrapped in barbed wire and ocean. Escape wasn't a plan. It wasn't even a thought. And the rules were simple. You had zero choice.
They get a jumpsuit, they don't get to pick the color.
Inside were cold, dark cells. Outside, the brutal heat of Cuba. And that was life.
There was food deprivation, a plexiglass insulated cell where you couldn't breathe, then 30 days in a cell where it's freezing cold, and then there were times when they locked you in a cell for 30 days, torturing you with heat.
It may not look this way today because the media is only given access to certain areas. More on that later. In a place like this, the worst weapon isn't the weather. It's not knowing when it ends. To survive here, you need to build your own structure. Create routines the institution cannot take away, like prayer, workouts, counting days, anything that keeps your mind from dissolving into one long, endless loop.
It actually amazes me how people don't break down, how they did survive. For a lot of these men, they had faith. I think a lot of them formed friendships with each other. They actually all have incredible defense lawyers. I think that has helped a lot of the detainees too, when you know somebody's in your corner.
So this place was meant for the worst of the worst, right? Then why did so many men later leave without charges? About 780 men have been held there since 2002. But the military commissions produced only 16 convictions, and even some of those were later reversed.
Extraordinarily enough, we have proven 98.48% of the prisoners to have been innocent.
That's Guantanamo in one sentence. And one of the innocent prisoners became a scapegoat for the US and a whistleblower to the world.
The forever prisoner, Abu Zubaydah, has been held for 24 years without charge.
Abu Zubaydah is the case that shows how this system can lock shut and never reopen. He was captured in Pakistan in March 2002. At the time, President Bush said this.
He was spending a lot of time as one of the top operating officials of Al-Qaeda, plotting and planning murder.
They also tried to link him to major plots, including 9/11. But what defines his story isn't a trial. It's what never comes. No charges, no verdict, no end. Instead, he became a test case for the CIA's enhanced interrogation program. He was waterboarded at least 83 times between 2002 and 2006, according to oversight records. In 2023, drawings Zubaydah made were released. They show what he says was done to him. Waterboarding inside a small, claustrophobic box, freezing buckets of water dumped on him while an air conditioner blasted, countless hours of loud music, and even a power drill to the head. Geez, just awful. These seem way too specific to be made up. And because his case is tied to classified interrogation history, key facts keep getting fought over in court. That's how you get a forever prisoner. And if Zubaydah is the secrecy extreme, The next case shows what happens when the machine labels you dangerous, and then takes years to admit it might be wrong, to the point where a movie is made about it. And if you want more gripping survival stories like this, make sure to like and subscribe.
My name is Mohammed Wal-Salahi. I was held and detained in Guantanamo Bay for 15 years. I was never charged or convicted of any crime.
Mohamedou Ould Slahi was described as a major terrorist, even falsely labeled the head recruiter for 9/11. But he wasn't grabbed in a raid in Afghanistan. He was in Mauritania, located in Africa. He voluntarily reported to police for questioning at the request of the United States, and that's when he was detained. From there, he was sent to Guantanamo, where he remained for years without charges or a trial. And then came the image the world remembers. Those early arrival photos of detainees in red.
The photo that they showed, those people kneeling with goggles, blindfold. I was one of those people.
Inside the camps, he later said it was years of isolation, no sleep, and constant humiliation. The point was simple: wear you down until you comply.
I mean, it's horrific. It ranges from everything to sleep deprivation. They would call it the frequent flyer program, where you would, the lights would be on and they'd keep you awake days on end. It's actually kind of amazing that people can survive that treatment.
In 2005, Slahi wrote Guantanamo Diary by hand while he was still inside. It was published in 2015 with heavy redactions by the US government, and it made the place feel painfully real. One of the most disturbing moments he describes is a letter he thought was from his mother. After years of silence, he believed he was finally hearing from her, and then he realized it was fake. He says it was meant to break him. A judge ordered his release in 2010. He remained in custody anyway until 2016. That's the contradiction at the heart of Guantanamo. Even when the system says let him go, the door can still stay shut. And that's not just a metaphor. One detainee's story became the definition of that locked door. His name is Shaker Amr.
Shaker Amr has seen and witnessed the deaths of 3 individuals in Guantanamo who the United States have said committed suicide.
The more they knew I'm linked to many issues they don't want the world to know about it, the more they want to keep me in Guantanamo.
Shaker Amr is a key witness of Gitmo. He's a Saudi-born UK legal resident, married to a British woman with 4 British children. He was captured in Afghanistan in late 2001. Amr said he was there doing charity work. He was then sent to Guantanamo in 2002, where he spent more than 13 years without charge. Just let that sink in. Even after he was cleared for release in 2007, he stayed there until 2015. His son, Saif Amr, spent years pushing for his father's release.
You haven't got any evidence that my father's done anything wrong and that he should be released as soon as possible.
Amr's lawyers say he was abused and held in long stretches of solitary confinement. Other detainees described him as an unofficial spokesperson inside the camp, someone who organized, negotiated, and pushed back. And Amr put the day-to-day reality like this.
You cannot walk not even half a meter without being chained. Is that a human being? That's a treatment of an animal.
He also said he witnessed the mistreatment of Ibn al-Sheikh al-Libi. This was a man who was tortured to give a false confession linking Saddam Hussein to al-Qaeda. US officials later used this claim to go to war against Iraq before it was discredited. Okay, wow, I guess they got what they needed. And that witness role mattered, which was likely why Amr remained imprisoned for an additional 8 years, despite being cleared for release in 2007 to keep things hush-hush.
And the consensus seems to be that torture just does not elicit valuable information, reliable information. You either say whatever you're going to say to make it stop, which means you're going to lie if you have to, say what your interrogators want you to say.
And that's the real fight. It's not only who's guilty, it's what the government can prove in court and what it tries to keep out of court.
Now, because it lies on Cuban and not American soil, the Justice Department has already previously determined that the U.S. Constitution does not apply there, and that has allowed many of its inmates to be held indefinitely without ever facing a trial.
At first, the U.S. argued Guantanamo was beyond the reach of American courts. Then the Supreme Court started cracking that logic. In 2004, it said detainees could challenge their detention in federal court. In 2006, it struck at the early commission system and clarified basic war rules, including those under the Geneva Conventions, still applied. And in 2008, it went further, saying detainees have a constitutional right to habeas corpus. That means a judge has to be able to review why someone is being held.
Not giving people a basic hearing when you take away their liberty is one of the reasons we fought the revolution, that the king can't deprive somebody of liberty without a hearing.
So the rules started changing on paper, but on the ground, Guantanamo stayed a mess. A lot of the biggest cases were tangled up with the earliest, most secret chapter of the War on Terror, classified evidence. Now, add politics.
Keeping this facility open is contrary to our values. It undermines our standing in the world. It is viewed as a stain on our broader record.
I think that was like my trip 19th time or 20th time being there. And I thought, oh, okay, well, he's going to do it. I guess this is it. I think some of my smarter colleagues are like, it's not going to be that easy. He's not going to be able to do it.
President Barack Obama ordered Guantanamo closed in 2009. It never happened because Congress restricted transfers.
He wanted to empty out the prison. He had to, empty it out of these detainees who couldn't go back to their country of origin, many of them, or they would be tortured or detained.
In 2013, detainees like Mansour al-Daifi, who spent 14 years there without ever being charged, joined a mass hunger strike that pushed Guantanamo back into the spotlight.
For most of the detainees at Gitmo, refusing to eat was a common form of protest. Mansour says he did it many times, and at one point was force-fed over the course of 2 years.
In a place designed to keep you invisible, refusing food became one of the only ways to force the world to look. And the response was force-feeding. This led to protests and a video reconstructing the act by rapper Yassine Bey, formerly known as Mos Def.
Something was going into my brain and it started to reach to the back of my throat, and I really couldn't take it.
Following the backlash, the US government tried to rebrand Guantanamo Bay as a humane place with a library full of books, prayer centers, and even an entertainment room, with ankle shackles.
If you follow me this way, I'll show you a standard cell.
When cameras show up, they're guided. They see approved areas and controlled visuals, with normal life framed right next to a system still shaped by secrecy.
There's also another side of Guantanamo, a place where 6,000 inhabitants try to go about their everyday lives in a bizarre contrast to the infamous prison.
There's even a weird gift shop on site where you can buy Kisses from Guantanamo magnets. Cute. But even after they've tried to improve their public image of Guantanamo, the facts remain. 9 people have died here without ever being given a trial.
People love to say, never again, but a lot of what happened after 9/11 and with Guantanamo really laid the groundwork for what's happening today.
In January 2025, President Trump issued a memorandum ordering the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security to expand Guantanamo's Migrant Operations Center to full capacity. This was to detain what was referred to as high-priority criminal aliens. He envisioned scaling it up to hold as many as 30,000 people. In 2026, Guantanamo is no longer only a war on terror site. It is being used again in immigration detention and deportation operations, and it is already facing court challenges.
Guantanamo Bay, which is located on Cuban land, also houses terrorism suspects, though they are away from immigration detainees.
Even as the migrant mission grows, the war on terror prison never fully ends. After the US transferred 11 Yemeni detainees to Oman in January 2025, only 15 Guantanamo prisoners remained. 6 of those men have never been charged. Others are stuck in the military commission system, including the 9/11 case. So what is Guantanamo? It's a dumping ground for problems the US does not want on the mainland. A place where distance makes it easier to bend the rules. And over the decades, it has worn different faces, but the job stays the same. If you're wondering what you can do, don't look away. Pay attention, share reliable reporting, and support groups pushing for fair treatment. If you're the donating type, groups like the Center for Victims of Torture, Reprieve, and the ACLU are in the mix on Gitmo issues. If Guantanamo is where the rules get blurred, ADX Florence is where the rules get brutally clear. It's the Supermax nicknamed the Alcatraz of the Rockies. We'll see you next time on another episode of How to Survive.